श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम्। ॐ सहना भवतु, सहनौ भुनक्तु, सह वीर्यं करवावहै, तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्युषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु, सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु, सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु, सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु, लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते, पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम्।
Good morning, students.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Okay, students, brief introduction. I am Kavita. I think most of you know it because earlier I had given introduction to the course cryptography and few were in my course also. Am I audible, students? Students?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Let us start with some interaction in the beginning. Okay. First thing is, can you please tell few points about compiler before we start with the formal definition? I want to hear from you. What did you feel, or what are the important points you have noted about compiler? Can you please tell? Maybe you can unmute and start speaking. Any points?
Good morning, ma'am. This is
Yeah.
Ritvik.
Yes.
So, ma'am, I feel like last semester, that is fifth semester, we had a course on theory of computation. So, we learned about finite automata and many ways of implementing and recognizing languages. So, I feel like we would be able to use that here because most compilers do not have a brain of their own to recognize certain symbols such as int when we use in C or C++. So we might have to use that as well here. And I think the course is looking forward to how compilers work in general, like to identify whether there's a syntax error or any other kind of an error.
Okay, Ritvik, thank you. Yeah, you have given about the prerequisite you have told, and also you have told the importance of the compiler. Yes, any other points, students? Okay, when you compile your program, your source code, what is that you get? Does it find any errors? What kind of errors, if so?
Syntactical.
Compilation.
Okay.
Like,
Okay, somebody said syntactical
bugs.
errors, and one more person is saying compiling errors, right? Okay. So means that it is also checking whether there are any errors in your source program, right? Okay. Anything else? Any points you want to add? Anybody?
Ma'am, there is something called lexical analyzer.
Okay, very good. Okay, so any idea what does it does? What does it do?
Yeah, no, ma'am, I forgot. I just remember the hierarchy.
Okay, fine. Very good. Okay. So something called lexical analyzer is there. Yes, definitely. This is one of the phase of the compiler. Yes. Okay. I think I can give the formal definition and then I will introduce the syllabus, what is there and what are the different units. And also I will tell about the course outcomes and then maybe we can have the formal definition of compilers. Okay. This is a 4 credit course. We have compiler design theory and also we have compiler design lab. Okay. And as you, Ritvik said, the prerequisite for this course is definitely theory of computation. Because most of the topics what you have learned in theory of computation we are going to apply and we are going to use it here. So theory of computation is a must course for compiler design. And coming to the unit 1, we have overview of compilation, where we are going to cover compiler structure, how does it look like the structure and the various phases in the compiler. So those things we are going to have. And then overview of translation, how the translation takes place from one language program to the other language. So overview of that. And then coming to the lexical analysis, we use the concept called regular expressions, which you have already learned in TOC. And also we use the regular expression, we use it in the scanning, which is also known as lexical analysis. And also we have the implementation of different scanners. So this will be covered in the first unit. And similarly, we have the next part as the parsers, where we'll be dealing with the syntax of the programming language. So we use expressing the syntax. And then we have 2 types of parsers, such as top-down parsing and bottom-up parsing. And we have certain examples for those parsing techniques like recursive descent and then LL of 1, similarly LR of 0, LR of 1 and LALR of 1. There are many more techniques, but in our syllabus, we will be dealing with these techniques. And coming to the unit 2, we have the context sensitive analysis. So in this particular unit, you have not heard anything, any topic, because in the unit 1 only we'll be using all the concepts which you have learned in TOC, but we'll be using throughout because it is done in phases. So here we concentrate on the uh, context sensitive analysis, which checks the type and we represent using the grammar called attribute grammar. And also we do a kind of translation which is known as syntax directed translation. And we use some intermediate representation in different forms, like graphical representation, linear representation. And also we use some data structures such as symbol tables. This is about the intermediate representation. And also we deal with how the procedure calls are made, and then how do we name and how do we communicate between the procedures using values. So that also will be covered in unit 2. So coming to the unit 3, although we don't go in depth with respect to unit 3 because it is completely towards the back end. In the unit 3 we'll be having something like the data flow analysis, and then we select the instructions with respect to a particular architecture, and we also use some registers allocation techniques, and we also deal with the optimization of the code using different techniques. Okay, so that is about the unit 3. So totally we have 3 units, and the textbooks are the first book is your prescribed book, Cooper Keith and Linda Towson. The title is Engineering a Compiler, and second edition. This I have already uploaded in the materials and resources folder. You can refer that. Okay, and also there are few references. This maybe if you are interested you can refer. Otherwise most of the material and resources we will share here only. Some of the references are Writing Compilers and Interpreters, a Software Engineering Approach. This is one book by Ronald Mark, and Apple W. Andrew. This is another book which deals with the compiler implementation in Java language, but we will be using C language in our syllabus. Okay, implementation in C. Means we whatever tools we are going to use and whatever examples we are going to take in our lab, that will be the C language. And also there is another book called Aho, Alfred V. Reviseti and Ullman. You would have heard this. The same author has got books related to TOC also. So the title is Compilers, Principles, Techniques and Tools. So this also can be a reference book. Only for more examples and more definitions, you can go with the references. Otherwise, mostly we will stick on to the first book, that is the textbook which is given. Okay, and yeah, of course we will have to take more examples. Other than this also there are many internet resources. If you search by topic, you'll get lot of information that also can be studied. Only thing is that the terminology may be different, the notations may be different, but the concept will be same. So you can also refer the internet resources. Coming to the course outcomes, we have 4 course outcomes. The first one is about how do we classify different phases of compiler and the theoretical concepts related to that. So that will be CO1. And CO2 is we have certain algorithms for managing the lexical analysis and the structure of the source program. So that is CO2. And the third CO is analyze the design of type systems, like we have to check the type and check the meaning of the program. So that is CO3. And CO4 is all the forms of intermediate representation and all the analysis related to that will be CO4. And we will include some topics related to optimization, that also comes under this. Outline of the introduction is we have the introduction, and then I'll be covering the compiler structure, and then overview of translation, which has 3 phases: front end, optimizer, and back end. Okay. So now I will give the formal definition of the compiler. Students, the course plan and the evaluation pattern will be shared a little later. Okay, so because we need to discuss on that. Once it is done, I will share it. Okay. Let us now have the formal definition of compiler. Compiler is a system software that translates a program in one language to the program in another language. Okay, I will repeat. Compiler is a system software that translates a source program into a target program. That is, whatever we take as an input, we call it as source program, and whatever we get, that we call it as target program. So it is a software which translates the program from one language to the other language. Okay, so that is compiler. And these languages depends, like suppose I take a high level language like C++, Java. These can be my source language, okay, which we understand and then we write the code using some programming language. So that is the source program. And the target program or the target language would be where we are going to execute. So what is the target machine we are going to have for the execution? So that can be the target language or target code. Okay. And when we use the compiler, users may, that is the programmers may write the program in their own convenient way. Okay, but compiler should have its own way to identify, as you said, some errors may be there that can be corrected, and also some kind of optimization is required, because most of the time the programmers will not bother and then just like that they use many variables, many language constructs they will use. But it can be optimized, and one of those phase in the compiler is the optimization. Okay, so in some way it has to improve your program. So that's what the compiler does. This just an overview. There are a lot of things that is happening. And coming to the interpreter, like how the compiler is a translator, similarly there is another kind of translator called interpreter. Okay, so this interpreter takes some executable program and it gives the result. Okay, so there are a lot of things that are common between the compiler and the interpreter, but we will be dealing with the compiler and not the interpreter. Okay, suppose if we take a C language, because we will be using C language in the lab, so I will deal more with the C language. C is typically compiled, means we are not interpreting, we are only compiling. Coming to another language, suppose if you want to compare, let us take Java language, where Java is compiled to bytecodes, as you all know, and it is the code for the Java virtual machine. And this is interpreted actually. So this bytecode is given as an input for the interpreter, and interpreter will give the result. So this is what happens in Java language. And also there is something called just-in-time compilation, which is used in Java. Uh, and this is the compiler is executed at the runtime. Okay, so this is also possible. If you take these two examples, C is compiled, it is only compiled, whereas Java is compiled to bytecodes, and in the next phase it will be interpreted also. So that is an overview. And what is that we are expecting from the compilers? So we need to transform our programming language code into another form of the code which the computer can understand. Okay, so the target machine is very important, means I can write my code using either C language or C++ or Java, whatever language you want to use, Pascal, Fortran, any language you take, high level language, you write the code, which we know, we are familiar with that. Okay, but when we want to execute it, computer cannot do it, it has to understand, means it has to create an executable code. Okay, so that is what the compiler is doing. It is translating our source program code into the code which can be executed in a particular target machine. Okay, so that is the compiler. And now coming to how does it do all these in stages? So compiler has basically two things to be shown, that is the front end and the back end. The front end is it deals with the source language, and the back end is it deals with the target language. That is, we are very much associated with the front end, because the programmers will write the program using some source language, some high level language. So front end deals with that. So source language is associated with the front end, and the back end is associated with the target machine, I can say, because it deals with what kind of instructions are required for that particular target machine, and how does it understand the code, and how does it give the result with respect to this code. So those things are related to the target language. So front end and back end are are two phases, I can say. Although in the front end, again, we have so many phases. Similarly, in the back end also, we have certain phases. So it is only the association between the source language program and the target language program. And already I have mentioned that some of the source languages can be like this: C, C++, Fortran, Java, and so on. Similarly, some target language can be you take a particular machine, and you refer to the instruction set of that particular machine, of that particular processor, and that architecture only you are going to use, and that makes you execute in that particular machine. Okay, so target language is nothing but it is related to a particular machine with the instruction set and its own architecture. Okay, so where you want to actually execute, that is why it is known as target. So finally I am going to execute in this machine, so I want to use this instruction set. So that is what we are going to do. So compiler, it takes source program as an input and it gives the target program as an output, and although it has several phases. Okay, so how do we connect this front end and the back end? Definitely, we need something because what happens in the front end, we do some kind of analysis. The front end is also known as analysis phase, and the back end is also known as synthesis phase. Okay, I have not mentioned here in the slides, but that is the common terminology used. Front end deals with the analysis phase, and the back end deals with the synthesis phase. Front end deals with the analysis phase because it analyzes our code, that is the source code. So what is that? Something like lexical analysis, something like syntax analysis, something like semantic analysis. So these are some of the analysis done by the front end. Okay, and there is some result coming in from the front end, and that should be fed as an input to the back end. Okay, so that we call it as some intermediate form. So that is what we are calling it as intermediate representation. So the output of the front end is the intermediate representation, and this intermediate representation is given as the input for the backend, which is also known as synthesis phase. So the output of the backend would be the instruction set architecture or the target code which we want to execute. Okay, so also there can be some optimization involved for the intermediate representation itself, because as I mentioned, one of the principle of the compiler is it has to improve the code. So whatever the user has written, so that code should be improved, and for that analysis is required. Okay, so the intermediate representation or intermediate form has to be optimized, and the optimized code can be given as an input to the backend. Okay, and coming to the instruction set, it is very much essential because each machine has some architecture, has some set of instructions. We call it as mnemonics, and we use the code opcode for each operation. For addition operation we have a code, for subtraction we have a code, for jump we have a code, for no operation also we have a code. So for everything we have some instructions or some code. So that's what is known as instruction set or architecture. Okay, so we can take some example like the source language program would be C, C++, Java, and the target program would be some instruction set related to the machine. Okay, so coming to what are these compilers producing as output. So we take some C program, suppose, and then we want to compile it. Okay, and there are many compilers for C language in your system. You can compile it, and once it is compiled, we can use it any number of times. So this particular compilation cost is counted for the final target. Once you compile, you can run any number of times till you make any changes. You would have already noticed when you execute some program, whenever you make changes into your program, you have to recompile it. Okay, so for the efficiency sake, we will have to see whether the cost is effective or not. So definitely the cost of the compilation does matters. Okay. And there is also one kind of translator which is known as source to source translators, where instead of giving the target programming language or the target machine code, it gives another language code. Means it takes some programming language code as an input, which is the source, and also it translates into another program which is also matching with some programming language. Okay, so it is that then it is known as source to source. So the normal compiler, what it does is from source to target it will do. That is the translation from the source language to the target machine code we will do usually. But it is also possible to convert from one programming language to the other programming language. Then it is known as source to source translator. Okay. Also, we have seen the interpreter. This is also one kind of translator, where we take some executable specification as the input. Examples for interpreter would be Perl, and there is another language, this is Scheme. These will take the executable code as the source input for the interpreter, and this interpreter will translate into the results directly. Okay, so that is the difference between the compiler and the interpreter, where the compiler will take some source language program, and then it will translate to the target machine code, and there you can run it and get the output. So that's what happens. Whereas in the interpreter, it will take some source program, something like Perl or Scheme program, and it will give the results. And one more example also I told you, that is Java virtual machine. So the bytecodes will be taken as input, and it will give the result. So that also can be an example, because Java language uses interpreter. Okay, same thing, whatever I told, it is in this slide. Java is compiled from the source code into a form called bytecode. And then this representation is, this is used basically to decrease the download times for the Java applications. So that is the advantage. As I mentioned, the cost also should be seen. It is not just the space. Also you have to take into consideration the time and the cost for each operation, or for each download, how many times you compile, how many times you execute, everything matters. So definitely this particular version of code is useful, because it is required for Java applications. Okay, and also we use the Java virtual machine, as you all know. The advantage is that it is a simulator for some processor, and also it can make use of the interpreter. Okay, coming to the intermediate representation, I want to mention one point. Intermediate representation is independent of the source language and the target language. Okay, means you take any source code, whether it is C or C++ or Java or Fortran, whatever it is, but you will use some independent representation in the intermediate representation. Okay, and similarly on the other end, you use machine A or machine B, whatever machine you want to use, it's fine, no problem. But the intermediate representation can be independent of these two languages. So you are going to create some form, like some diagram or some table, which is independent of these two. Means you don't have to worry about the source language, you don't have to worry about the target language. My intermediate representation works similarly. So when I give something, when I run through the phases of the compiler, I create the intermediate representation which is independent of both, which is an advantage. Otherwise, what happens for C language, I will create some intermediate representation, say intermediate representation 1, and then this intermediate representation is mapped onto the target code. So only for this I can use. Then again I will have to create for C++ what is my intermediate representation, and then run through and then get to some machine, say machine B. Like this, for every machine, for every source language we will have to create. So that we really don't want. That's why we use something called intermediate representation, which is independent of the source language and the target language. So that is a very important step in the compilers. Intermediate representation plays a very important role. Likewise, here also we can reduce the time and the cost by doing so by using these kind of operations. Okay. And what are the practical uses of these phases of the compilers? Okay, you would have heard about the greedy algorithms. One of the application is we can use it in the register allocation. Practically what happens in the architecture, in the system architecture, you would have learned, have you learned? Okay, COA you have learned, right? Computer organization and architecture you have learned, right?
Yes.
Students?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So you have some idea about the assembly language, right? Some idea at least. Okay. So there in the real architecture, what happens? We will have to use some registers. Like we call it as accumulator, we call it as a stack register, we call it as some register we'll be using, and that is for a storage purpose we'll be using. And the instructions will be in such a way that we will have to use the registers only. Sometimes we will have to depend on the memory. Sometimes we will have to use a combination of these registers and memory. All that can happen in the instruction set. Okay. And also we have different addressing modes, immediate addressing mode, then register mode, register direct mode, register indirect mode. There are many modes also. So with respect to these, we will have to take care of how we are going to apply our algorithms to perform any action actually. So one such action is what? The register allocation. When you have n number of registers, then you don't have to worry, but it is not an efficient way of using the registers. So we will have to select and use the registers in such a way that minimum number of registers are utilized, and it has to be efficient. Means if I give any number of registers, then you'll be free to use any number of registers, but we don't want to do that. Many times what happens, the register will be used in a particular statement, and later I don't need that data, then I can allocate the same register for something else. So that's what happens practically. Therefore register allocation is one of the step or stage in the compiler. That's why we use algorithms called greedy algorithms for solving that. Okay, so register allocation is one practical use. Then coming to the list scheduling. List scheduling means you would have allocated something into your data structure. Okay, one such data structure would be the symbol table. So whatever you have encountered in your code, like you would have used some variables. Okay, so that has to be saved somewhere. So these variables are saved in some data structure. Okay, if you are maintaining some list. Okay, in that list I would have got all my variables, all my function names, uh, and the attributes related to that also. So those things are already there, and I need to access that. Okay, I need to access that means I will have to use some searching techniques. So whether this particular symbol is already entered in the table or not. If it is already there, let me access. If it is not there, then I insert it or I update it. Okay, in the first phase I found only the name. I don't know the type of it. Later I find the type of that particular variable. Then I need to update that attribute. So how do we do that? Then we update in the data structure. So this kind of searching and adding or updating is required, and that is also one of the application. So that is list scheduling. So that is the second thing. And the next thing is the dead code elimination. So dead code elimination is what we use graph representation for this and graph algorithms to deal with this. Why? Because when we write the code, we don't care whether we are going to use this particular assignment or not. I just assign something to some variable and I leave it. I don't even print. Okay, so it is not used anywhere. Or did I use it in the next computation? That also we are not sure. So such things may happen. Or after some point, maybe you feel that this is useless. This is not required for me in the future, in the next part of the program. Then that should be eliminated. So that is known as the dead code elimination. So in this step, what we do is we use some graph algorithms. If it is connected, we know that okay, it will be useful somewhere. If it is disconnected, then I don't need this variable, I don't need this assignment, I don't need this particular step. maybe we can delete it. So that's what happens in the dead code elimination. Coming to the instruction selection, this is also a very important task because you have a set of instructions, but you have to select it properly. You will have to see how many bytes it takes and how the instruction works, whether the source and the target both are registers, or one is the register and the other one is the memory location, or how does it work. So that is very important. Okay, for that selection of instructions in the architecture, we use something called dynamic programming. Okay, you all these concepts you would have learned in some course, so we are just applying that. Okay, so that is the instruction selection. Coming to the finite automata and push down automata, it has got a direct application. So finite automata is useful in scanning and the push down automata is useful in parsing. Okay, so why it is required, we'll see. So in the finite automata, you would have learned deterministic finite automata, that is DFA, and non-deterministic finite automata, which is NFA. Okay, and for all these you can find some connection. So NFA and DFA are connected very much with the regular expression and regular language. Okay, so only I call it as a regular language only when the DFA or NFA exists for it, or I can represent in the form of regular expression. So what is this regular expression doing then? Regular expression is useful to represent the pattern in my language. Suppose if you take a C language, I have certain keywords, I have certain variable names, I have certain um, special characters like comma, which is used as a separator, semicolon, which is used as delimiter, parenthesis we use, left parenthesis, right parenthesis, open bracket, braces, uh, open and close we use, hash symbol we use. There are many things that we are using in our source language. Okay, so how do I represent that then? So all these are useful. The regular expression is very much useful to represent these kind of the patterns, and that we call it as tokens here. Okay, so that is what is going to happen in the scanning step. So why finite automata is required for scanning? That is because I am trying to read my code from left to right, from top to bottom, from the line 1 I start. So what I am encountering in the sequence, I take it as the sequence of tokens, that is the sequence of patterns. So these patterns only we are representing using the regular expressions, and to represent that in the form of diagram, like how the transition takes place from one state to the other state when the input symbol is read. Like suppose I want to represent int, then I will be reading I first, then I will take a transition to the next state, then I will read n, then next state, and then t, next state, then I recognize it as int. Similarly, for any variable name, suppose my variable name is say sum, sum. So initial state I read s, then go to the next state, then u, next state, and then m. I call it as an identifier because it is representing some name, that is some variable name or the function name. So like this, we can represent all the patterns whatever we use in our program, in our source program. So that is how the scanning helps, and that is how the regular expressions and finite automata helps in the compiler. Similarly, the pushdown automata. Pushdown automata is essential for parsing. So parsing is also known as syntax analysis. Means in the first phase, you would have found all the particular tokens like int, some variable name, comma, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, all that you would have found. Okay, but can I place it in some random order? No, definitely not. So I have to put it in the proper standard form. Then only the C language can be recognized. Means the syntax should match whatever I write, that should match with the syntax of the language, the programming language. So it checks that. So whether I have written correctly or not, it will verify every stage. It will check whether the syntax is correct or not. So for that, we need something called grammar. Like how we use the grammar for natural language, for programming languages, we use something called context-free grammar. Okay, context-free grammar is very much popular to represent all the programming language constructs, and that is how we check whether our syntax is correct or not. That is the importance of context-free grammar. And you know that context-free grammar, if you give definitely for that context-free grammar, you can create a push-down automata, because to process that we need some machine or model, and that's what we use it as push-down automata. Okay, and the memory used for push-down automata is stack, and the finite automata does not have any memory. That is why it cannot solve most of the problems. So that you would have already noticed in TOC what kind of problems can be solved by finite automata and what kind of problems can be solved by push-down automata. So you know the difference, isn't it? So for parsing, what we do is we check the syntax using the grammar and the model, that is the push-down automata, and then we will be able to say whether it is the right syntax or wrong. Okay, we will be creating some tree called parse tree. So that will be the outcome of the parsing step. So this outcome, we are going to take it as the input for the next stage, and so on. So the finite automata and the push-down automata are very important for scanning and parsing. Okay, so that is one of the application. And coming to the last point, that is we also use something called fixed point algorithms. This is very much useful in the data flow analysis. Why this data flow analysis is essential in compilers? You need to know how the data flows from one stage to the other stage. I have a series of steps, so I should know in this step the variable A is having this data. Okay, in the next step, what happens? Whether I am using the same data or whether I am changing the data. So this should be known to us. So that kind of analysis is required. Therefore, for that kind of analysis, we depend on some algorithms. Okay, so that is called fixed point algorithms. So these are some of the applications or practical use of the compiler stages. Also, it can deal with some problems such as the dynamic allocation, synchronization, naming, locality, memory hierarchy management, pipeline scheduling. It also plays a very important role in the software engineering because we will have to experience how the compiler works. Definitely, it is one of the important point with respect to software engineering also. I think you are going to read this software engineering in the current semester. So you'll know how it can be connected. The compiler can be connected, or the applications of compiler can be connected with respect to the software engineering. Okay, so that is the practical use. Coming to the principles, I will stop after this. Coming to the fundamental principles of compilation, the first thing is, the very first principle is the compiler must preserve the meaning of the program being compiled. Means I have my source code and when I compile it, it should not change the meaning. Okay, it has to be semantically equivalent in the sense what I am expecting, that's what I need. My logic, it should not change. So if I'm finding the sum of n numbers, it should be the finding the sum of n numbers only. It should not change the task which has to be done. Okay, so it should never change the meaning of the program being compiled. So that is the first principle, and it should not be violated. Okay, and the second principle is, in some way, in the some visible way, there should be some improvement after compiling. Means I would have written some code after compiling, I should see some improvement in my input code, and the target code should be very efficient. So that is what we look forward. So these are the two basic principles of the compilation, and this has to be it has to prove actually. Okay, and we can prove it. So the first principle, definitely it should not change the meaning of the program. Whatever the source program says, whatever task it is given, that should happen, and we have to get the desired output only. We are looking forward for the desired output, and we look forward for that. So that is expected, and similarly there should be some improvement. That is why we make use of the optimization techniques in the compiler phases, so that there is improvement in the code, in the target code. So at each stage, we perform some analysis to improve the code, and the compiler itself does. Most of the time, you will not care for the type, you will just use it. but compiler has to verify that whether it is making sense or not. It will see when you make some assignment, it will check whether it is logically correct or not, whether my RHS and LHS is doing properly, whether it is matching or not, or whether I can perform some operation, arithmetic operation on the string or something else. It will have to verify. There are so many things that are happening in the compiler phases, and it will check each and every stage, and every phase it will identify the errors. Means if I use some variable name, say sum, okay, sum is a variable name and it cannot be a keyword. Similarly, if I use if is only the keyword. I cannot use this if as a variable name, isn't it? By mistake, if you take it as if1, if I take, it is not the keyword now. It will be treated as what? Identifier. Okay, so that's how the compiler checks. At every phase there is some kind of errors that is identified, and it will give all the details about the errors also. Okay, so that's what happens in the actual compiler. And in the next class maybe we will go in depth about the structure of the compiler and what are the different phases we will see, and in each phase what happens also we will see. Now I have just given the introduction, just the principle of the compiler, what can be the source languages and what can be the target languages, and what is the importance of intermediate representation. And I have dealt with the applications, the practical use of these phases, and also we have used some kind of algorithms and some machines. We have used some models we have used in the compiler construction. So those things I have told students. If you have any doubts with respect to this topic, you can ask. Otherwise, we can wind up. Thank you, students.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am,
Yes.
initially, yes, ma'am. So initially you told that compiler converts like the source language from the source to the target language based on the ISA instruction set architecture of a machine. So like each machine will have a different processor and their corresponding ISAs will be different. So how
Yes.
will the compiler know that I need to convert it to this particular one only? Other if I have to like code it also, wouldn't it be really complicated on the compiler side to work for each and every kind of instruction set architecture in the market? And like given the fact that we have new processes coming like every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so how will the compiler adapt to this the new process? So that's
Okay.
what I.
Okay, Vishnu. Okay, I think you are very much clear about the source language. We have a lot of source languages. We know how to manage it. So that is done in the front end. So the back end, I told no, I didn't mention the phases what are happening in the back end. One of the phase in the back end is the instruction scheduling and the instruction selection. So that will be definitely with respect to some particular machine only. So you should have decided, okay, this machine I'm going to run means I'm going to use this particular instruction set only. Only intermediate representation is independent of the source and the target, whereas my front end is very much associated with the source language, and similarly my back end is also associated with some particular target machine. Okay, if at all you want to use a new machine, then you should have used the instruction set. In the back end, you have to select the instruction set as well as the addressing modes, as well as the data size, whatever you want to take, everything you can take with respect to that target machine only. Okay, so it is very particular to that particular machine. So as the new machine exists, you will have to adopt yourself. And also there is one concept known as cross compiler. Okay, you would have already created some compiler and then you want to use it for different target machine. Then you internally another translator you can make use, and then you can run in the respective target machine. So definitely solution is there for everything. Only thing is that I will be not using the simple compiler. Then I will have to take many phases, many passes also sometimes, and then I will have to use a special kind of compiler also for such system architecture. Okay, is that clear? Backend deals with the architecture of your machine. Okay, that is why I said instruction set, that is with respect to the target machine. If it is a new target machine, for that you will have to have the instruction set and the architecture respective to that. Is that clear, Vishnu?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, like for what do I say? Like for every kind of machine that exists, I'll have to hard code the compiler to work with respect to that machine.
Yes, yes, yes. See, if
There's
I'm
no
using
like
8,
intelligent system which like adapts and works. There's nothing
no,
like.
no.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
whatever compiler I develop, see for C, C++, I can use a common compiler because most of the things are common. But I can't use the same compiler for something else. So it is like that. Okay.
Okay.
Is that
Okay.
clear? Okay.
Yes.
Only intermediate representation is independent, whereas the compiler is not independent. Definitely, you need to take care of the source language as well as the target machine.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, students. It's time. If you have any doubts, you can post also. We will continue in the next class. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.